Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Marketplace Report by Handmade Seller. I'm Amber Christian, editor of Handmade Seller Magazine, and it is my pleasure today to welcome Jon Lincoln from goimagine as our special guest. So, Jon, welcome to the show, and can you please introduce yourself and goimagine?
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you having me, Amber. As you said, my name is Jon Lincoln. I'm the founder of goimagine. For those who don't know who we are a handmade marketplace that is based just in the USA. And we focus heavily on shop local and giving the ability to find makers and artists that are local to you within your state or within your region so you can support the makers and artists that are near you.
Mhm. All right, so that we'll get into more about some of these cool shop local initiatives and things that you've rolled out in the last year or so. But can you tell some more about the origin story of the marketplace? Why did you start it? How long have you been around? It's always kind of a fun story. So tell us more about how this all got off the ground.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been in tech for a long time. I started another technology company about 10 years ago. Had the typical founder experience. We raised money, did fairly well, and I exited the company a few years ago. But what I found in growing the other technology company is that it was all about the money. It was all about the shareholders. And I personally became pretty disenchanted as the founder, working so hard, 60, 70, 80 hours a week only to have the end result be the bottom line of how much you make your shareholders. And so this is back in 2000, I want to say 2019, that I had the idea of building a marketplace that was focused more on social good than it was focused on shareholder returns. That's why with goimagine, we're heavily philanthropic based. Every transaction that is bought on goimagine, 2% is now being donated to charity. We've actually just recently announced that we're taking on a similar model to, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Amazon Smile, which
Hmm.
was Amazon Smile, which is now a defunct aspect of Amazon. But at the time, they had donated over $500 million by offering donations for every transaction. And so that's kind of what we've adopted so that philanthropy and helping children in need is part of the fabric of our business. So anyway, I ended up leaving my last company to start this venture and try and do something more I would call it socially good in the world.
Hmm. So, love that mission that about doing social good in the world and giving back because it can feel very maybe not necessarily transparent, with a lot of marketplaces. And so it's nice to be like, hey, it's straight up, it's 2% of what we do. You know that that's going to children in need. So now, can you talk a
Yeah,
little? Yeah, you talk a little bit about why did you pick the children in need cause? Like, where did that start? Because I don't think we've ever gotten into this. I've done other interviews with you. I
yeah.
don't know what made you pick that one to start with.
Well, there was a couple of reasons. One was, we really wanted to focus on an aspect that everybody could get around.
Mhm.
We don't want to be a company that is ever seen like we're in any way political or trying to support a cause that people don't want to support. And helping children in need is a pretty broad way to help those in the world. Helping children in need. Now we do have a lot of different charities we support, and for those who always ask which charities, if you go to our website and on the footer of the
Mhm.
website click on charity partners, you'll be able to see currently the four charities we've donated to. And our goal is to eventually open up to do more and more charities that are all children focused. Mostly because it's feel good. It's something that I think everyone can rally around. And the bigger idea here is that with marketplaces, the beauty of a marketplace is they're so scalable through the network effects, as it's called, with the buyers and the sellers transacting. And if buyers and sellers could just come together on a platform that's focused on the social good, it then becomes a scalable model that's infinite giving, right?
Mhm.
Um, that's why I was so attracted to the marketplace model is that it's all about the people. It's people powered, right? And
Mhm.
and when people rally around a good cause, a lot of good things can happen.
Mhm. Now, we talked about the fact this is a US base, so it's for US only sellers. But can you talk some more about what kinds of categories are eligible to be sold on the marketplace?
Sure. So, the primary thing is that we are a handmade marketplace. So the real crux is that it has to be handmade, and many marketplaces have different definitions of what handmade means.
Mm-hmm.
So if anyone's interested, definitely go to our website and check out the handmade guidelines. But we do very much believe that handmade means that the maker has to touch the product. So no drop shipping is allowed. No print on demand is not allowed. We do not allow AI art on the site. And then in terms of categories, to your question, it's all the categories you would expect in terms of jewelry, home and living, bath and beauty. We have food vendors. We have games, puzzles. I mean, clothing. It runs the gamut. I mean, we're open to all aspects of the handmade industry. For us, it's more about that it's handmade and who made the product than what category it falls into.
Okay. So, can you share a little more about the story of your baby marketplace and your first launching? What did things look like when you first launched? And then talk about how it's evolved, right? Because we all, especially if it's been around a few years, we can all sort of chuckle on, well, here's where we started. I've talked to
Yeah,
some people that started in Facebook groups, there's things that started email, they've started all over the place. And so, tell us more
and
about how you got started.
you always make mistakes at the start. I mean, that's
Oh,
reality. And your audience, Amber, is an audience of business owners as well. And so it's like every business. You start with an idea, and then as you learn more, you start to realize what was a good idea, what was a bad idea, and how to do things differently. So we
yeah.
started, and it sounds like you mentioned it maybe with someone else. We actually started with a Facebook group ourselves.
Mhm.
So this is going back in 2020, before the pandemic. This was like in January, so we didn't even know a pandemic was coming. Um, I started doing more and more research, and then started a Facebook group and invited in a lot of the handmade artisans we knew, just to start the conversation of what a handmade marketplace would look like if we could start one. Right? What like almost like a blank canvas. What are we going to paint for a marketplace? And our group grew and grew. In fact, today the group is vibrant. We've got about 12,000 makers and artists in our Facebook group. So, quick plug: if you want to join us, go to Facebook and look for the Go Imagine official makers page. There's now a bunch of other ones that we did not start. A lot of Go Imagine pages, but which is fine. But the one that we want is the official makers group. Um, but it started off with a Facebook group with more gathering information and doing what I guess you would call the market research. We launched beta in 2020, and we right away started to grow, which was fantastic. But we also had our growing pains, on the technology
Mhm.
side of things, the platform we were building on, the development that had to happen. Um, it's everything you could expect. I mean, I assure everyone who's listening here, whenever you're on a technology product and you encounter a bug, know that on the other end of that is a company somewhere that's freaking out about that bug. We're like, people are like, why isn't this working? There's someone else trying to fix it. I assure you. And so that's what you face as a young technology company is fighting the bugs, fighting things like that. And then the big thing is getting the word out. And how do you get people to know about this? And then even after you get the word out, fighting the skepticism.
Mhm.
The reality is there has been a lot of handmade marketplaces that have come and gone over the years,
Mhm.
and that makes, I think, a lot of sellers gun shy about joining a new one, because why would you join a new one if you don't know if it's going to be around in a year? I think over the past few years, we've really had to um, earn that trust of our customers that we're in this for the long haul, the growth is there, and that we're seeing a bright future.
Mhm. And the other reality of a marketplace too is that you can't guarantee people their products will sell or not. It's sort of that perfect storm of if buyers find it via their searches and the algorithms and you had it correctly coded. So, something that's interesting that had caught my eye from the beginning about what you guys have done that I think was a little different is your Maker Business Academy. So, it's like even if, even if you show up on Go Imagine, you've set up your site and you don't have a bunch of immediate sales, you make other things available. So speak a little bit more about the Maker Business Academy, your MBA program.
Yeah, so that's a program we started that was based off offering more education around to our sellers on how to build your business, and not even necessarily
Mhm.
build your business on Go Imagine, but build your business in general. right? And
Mhm.
think about yourself as a business. So the MBA, the Maker Business Academy, is on our social app called Maker Circle, and it gives people the ability to have ongoing education around building your business. Um, and to your point, yeah, there's I think a lot of the marketplaces, they face that chicken or the egg uh, problem,
Mhm.
which is, how do you get buyers if there's no sellers? How do you get sellers if there's no buyers? I mean, that is the problem of every marketplace, and how to overcome it. Different marketplaces have different techniques, and ours is to just provide enough value to our makers outside of just how many buyers are on the marketplace.
Right. And so instead of it being about, hey, get me 10 transactions a month or I'm gone, it's like, hey, there's value in being in the ecosystem, between the education for growing your business, between some of the other things that are available. I think it's a good strategy, because you're right, it is a very chicken and egg problem. And some businesses are seasonal. And for artisans, it's like if you set up on a shop and then you're gone a month later, you haven't even had time to be incorporated into the search
Right.
or their social media. And so these things take time. And I think I've seen from experience too, people are really quick to pull the plug on a marketplace if it hasn't performed like right away, which is
Yeah.
challenging because you didn't give the marketplace enough time to do anything with your
Well,
stuff.
absolutely. I mean, even when it comes to SEO ranking, if you think about like things like getting onto Google and Bing and Yahoo and all these search engines, sometimes those engines take weeks, if not months, to index all of your products. So if you've posted your products and haven't given them time to mature, they never even get to the point of hitting the search engines before you pull them off. Um, and it's a little, it's perception is reality. I do find it funny, and I'm speaking from the marketplace perspective, that with large marketplaces, using Etsy as the prime example, uh, I'll often be a lurker in some of these Facebook groups or Reddit groups, wherever, and people will say, I've been on Etsy for 3 months and I haven't sold anything, or I've been on Etsy for 6 months and I haven't sold anything. Why? And people will say, well, the reason is because your SEO, because of this, because of that. But when you're on a newer marketplace, people are quick to jump at the marketplace is the problem, not the you should work on your photography, you should work on your SEO, you should work on your pricing model, you should work on your brand, you should work on your right. So it's definitely a challenge for a new smaller marketplace to prove it. When you're small with Etsy, they get a little bit more slack, and the maker has to do the work. Does that make sense?
Mhm. Mhm. No, absolutely, absolutely. And so one of the components I know that you've added over time, and I've seen a few marketplaces do this, and I feel like that this just to me as a with a technology background, this just makes a ton of sense, is the ability to both be on the marketplace as well as host their website.
Yes.
And so, can you speak a little bit about the Mosaic product that you have? Because I tend to find in conversations, people don't realize it's there. They actually don't know to look to marketplaces to know that they could actually host their website too. So you get a little more bang for your buck, frankly.
Well, yeah.
So,
So
speak about that, would you?
Mosaic is what I think I'm most excited about. And the reason for that is, we recognized early on that there were a lot of sellers, handmade artists on Etsy, that were either leaving Etsy or looking to branch out from Etsy to create their own websites. And they were doing it by going on to Shopify, or they built a website on Wix, or they built a website on WooCommerce, and the list goes on of all the different website building platforms. And so we said to ourselves, going back a couple of years now, like, well, what if you joined goimagine and part of your subscription was getting your own website? Your own branded, doesn't say goimagine, it doesn't have goimagine's logo or anything, where you have your own website. And we would do it at $10 a month, right? So
Hmm.
the idea there was that, okay, well, these makers are already spending 40, 50, $60 a month for a website. Well, now they can come to us and not only get a website, but everything you post on your website with us also gets posted in our marketplace. Um, so now that gets to the point, like, we could bring you one sale a year, and that's more than Shopify is driving you, or more than Wix is
Right.
driving you, because they're driving you no traffic, right? You have to drive
Hmm.
all your own traffic when you have your own website. And this has been a little bit of how we've started to conquer that chicken or the egg concept, is like, we add enough value for the sellers, that it's not just about how much traffic we're bringing them, it's also about having their own website so they can actually build their brand. And so, yeah, Mosaic has been great. We've had hundreds and hundreds of sellers leaving platforms like Wix or Shopify for Mosaic. And
Mhm.
but one thing you mentioned, which I find interesting, is, and again, being this is a business podcast, is we're still continuing to work on our messaging. How do we message that? You said people don't realize it. You're like, well, they don't realize it. How do we get the
Mm-mm.
message out that says, don't go to a platform like Shopify or Wix, spend 4 or 5 times the amount that you're going to spend on us, and it's a platform that is not built for handmade. They're platforms that really don't, I don't want to say don't care about you, but you're just one of Shopify and Wix and these websites. They were not built for handmade artists. They don't have a handmade community. They were
Right.
built they were built for anyone who sells anything online, right? Shopify, they have people selling toothbrushes and t-shirts, and any type of company is on Shopify. We're really focused on building a handmade community, and that handmade community is built of makers and artists all working together to build their brands on our websites. And so how we get that message across is always a challenge, uh,
Mhm.
because we're kind of two things in one. We're kind of this hybrid.
Right.
It's like a black and white cookie. We kind of have both things going on. And how do we get that message across when you have limited time to say that message? A Facebook ad is so short. How do you say everything you're doing in such a small amount of information?
Mhm. And to get people's attention because typically it seems like the whole website things go in cycles, right? It seems like, the end of the year, beginning of the next year is when a lot of people are going to do all of their migrations and things, and so it seems like it is pretty seasonal. But I think you're right in that it really is just an education and having that conversation about what does a modern marketplace look like. So it's kind of the whole point of why I started this series of interviewing marketplaces and talking with people about it is saying, hey, what do modern marketplaces do now as people are building it out? And how are people looking at the problems? Because this strategy is actually something I'm seeing a lot of people do. And it makes so much sense because they're like, oh, it's easy. I can get whatever I want on Shopify. Yeah, but do you want to maintain your whole website? Yeah, I was have to think about maybe you do. Maybe you do need that level of control, but a lot of
Yeah,
people don't. They're like, no, I just need a baseline, do my baseline e-commerce. I don't need a really sophisticated platform. And so
yeah.
there's a lot to think about there.
There's absolutely a use case for Shopify. And if
Mhm.
you are a very, I'll call it, tech enabled person, someone who really understands tech, someone who geeks out on it a little bit, someone that also is trying to scale your business, and you are going to truly take advantage of all the bells and whistles that Shopify has to offer, yeah, Shopify has its place. The
Mhm.
reality is, though, there is a large subset of makers and artists that are just looking for a clean, easy website that lets them promote it at their on their social media, promote it on their business cards, promote it at their vendor fairs, put it on their on like flyers, whatever they're doing to promote their website. They don't need all the bells and whistles that Shopify offers, and they're overpaying, quite frankly, for what they actually need.
Absolutely. So it's finding that sweet spot of people knowing what they really are going to need in a website and what they're not going to need in a website. I think that that's a big piece of it too. And so some of it's knowing where you're going as an artisan
Right.
business, right? Of knowing your strategy, be like, I don't need all that other stuff. And frankly, honestly, there's nothing that says later you can't graduate into those other platforms. But to start with them can be you have to be very careful as an artisan business to not bury yourself under way too many costs. and
Oh
and
yeah,
that's really one that I've seen some concerns because Shopify is extremely good at their advertising and pushing you into the point of sale and some of the other systems. And then I've listened to, oh, well, then you bolt on this module and then you bolt on this module and this module, and pretty soon people are telling me they're spending $79, $99 a month, and I'm like,
yeah.
that's a lot of money for a handmade business. And so I
And
try to bring that awareness up.
people need to realize too that technology, and there's so many options out there, like spending money on advertising, getting email marketing tools, getting website tools. At the end of the day, these are just tools, and I
Mhm.
equate them very similar to like a physical tool that's in your house. Just because you bought a hammer doesn't mean it's going to build you a house, right? You have
Mhm.
to use the tool. You still have work to do. Buying the tools does not build the house. All you're going to end up with is a bunch of raw lumber and a saw in your front yard and an unbuilt house, right? But I think that a lot of these sellers, they see the tools, and in the advertising and the marketing, they're all shiny, like we'll drive you business, we'll make you money. They buy the tool, but then they realize, well, they didn't have the time to put into that tool, they didn't really want to work in that tool. It's not like an on off button, right? You don't just turn it on and it starts working for you. You need to work the
Mhm.
tool. And yeah, and so that's where I think a lot of makers can waste money buying tools they ultimately don't use and end up collecting dust in the garage.
Absolutely. So now can you speak to a little bit more about how your fee structures work for GoImagine? So if someone were to get set up on your platform, I know you've got a couple different tiers if I remember correctly. Can you speak to how that works on GoImagine?
Yes, we have three tiers. They start at $2.50 a month, and the top tier is $10 a month. Now, with each tier, you unlock more features. The top tier at $10 is the Mosaic tier, and that's the one that comes with your own branded website.
Mhm.
So, for those who are looking for their own website, they oftentimes will go for the $10 plan because they're getting their own website and a shop on GoImagine. The other two tiers are $2.50 and $5, and you unlock more products. So at $2.50, you get 20 products on the marketplace, which can be sold unlimited times. It's a little different than the Etsy model where every time you sell it, you got to pay. Like it's unlimited times. And at $5, you unlock 200 products you can post onto the marketplace. And in terms of transaction fees, we take 5% transaction fee. It's important to note that we do integrate with Stripe, which is our payment provider. They
Mhm.
take their own 2.9%. So you're talking 7.9% for every transaction on the platform. Um, that's it. We don't have any other hidden fees. I mean, that's kind of broken out pretty straightforward. And if you go to the website, you can certainly go to the membership page and kind of see it broken down, pretty clearly.
Mhm. Okay, so now we talked a little bit about how marketplaces are this chicken and an egg problem because of the buy side, the sell side. It's you're having to develop actually two different entirely different pools of populations at the same time.
Correct.
Are there anything what kinds of things are you doing to developing the seller pool is one thing, but developing the buyer pool is kind of really the challenge for a lot of marketplaces. What kinds of things or initiatives, things you're working on to develop the buyer pool?
Yeah. So the one thing that we launched and we alluded to it earlier is I think we've recognized that most marketplaces out there are going very global, especially the large ones. I know you look at
Mhm.
Etsy, you look at Amazon, you look at Wayfair, you look at Temu. These are giant global marketplaces. And as a buyer, when you're on these marketplaces, you don't know where the products are coming from. You're buying a product that it can be coming from anywhere in the world, which is great. There's nothing wrong with that. But we also believe that there's a time and a place that people want to support local. And so we've actually built in a lot of shop local tools into GoImagine, and we have more that we're releasing soon to make it easier for buyers to find makers and artists in their own area. We think there's something to be said about supporting your local economy, supporting your local makers and artists. We're USA only, so we're local already for USA. But even broken down further, people have the ability to filter by state if you want to see who in Ohio is selling bath and beauty products, or who in Massachusetts is selling jewelry or selling rings or whatever you're looking for. So shop local is one of the things we're doing to differentiate ourselves from the masses, so to speak. And then the other, there's our philanthropic mission, the ability to know that every time you buy something on our marketplace, you're also helping a child in need. And that's the philanthropic side, which gives the socially good, conscious people a desire to support what we're doing. So those are kind of the two big things I think are driving buyers to our marketplace, along with all the great
Mhm.
products.
Mhm. So speaking of great products, what makes a great product listing in from your perspective?
Oh, geez, that's a loaded question. So starting with the product itself, it needs to be a quality product. But the problem becomes when that quality product is hidden behind bad SEO and bad pictures, right?
Mm.
I think a lot of people who have great products don't do as well as products that aren't as good, even because they have invested the time that is needed to present the product from a marketing perspective. Photography, I would say, is number one. Without great
Mhm.
photography, there's no way for the buyer to actually really get a good feel for what that product's quality is. And then SEO, how to get found. And SEO is one of those things that are both on platform and off platform. So whether you're on Etsy or goimagine or any of the other marketplaces that are out there, focusing on how are people going to find your products. Uh, like with goimagine, for instance, everything that's on goimagine is automatically fed into Google Shopping. So
Mm.
when you talk about the traffic that Go Imagine's getting. And people will say, well, Go Imagine doesn't have the buyer base. Well, really? Because every product we have is on Google, and Google has the biggest buyer base on the planet, right? And we have sellers that, and I kid you not, we have sellers that have really kick-ass SEO and great imagery, and they're getting sales consistently through Go Imagine because they're finding them on Google. Buyers are finding them on Google, finding them on Google Shopping, finding them on Google Shopping, right? Now it's a double-edged sword, right? And a double-edged sword in the case of like, well, you could say and Go Imagine there's not as many buyers, but there's less competition. Maybe you're a jewelry maker and you're on Go Imagine. Well, you're one of only 1,000 jewelry makers on Go Imagine, but there's not as many buyers. But then when you go into Google, okay, there's a ton more buyers,
Mhm.
but there's a ton more jewelry makers. You're now one of millions. So that's where SEO really is needed, is to rise up the rankings in Google, because Go Imagine, being on Go Imagine, it is feeding you into a system of endless traffic, but it's also feeding you into a system of endless competition. So, so that's where you need to focus on your own SEO and your own pictures and your pricing points to really get noticed and get seen by a potential buyer.
Mhm. Now, someone that lists their products on GoImagine, so they go to Google Shopping, do they go to any other kinds of platforms as well?
They go to Bing, so everything's on Bing.
Okay.
We have a
Okay.
feed that goes into Facebook. That happens as
Okay.
well. And then that those are ones that we I don't want to say force feed, but we have a sync designed for those platforms. On top of that, you have all the other search engines that are constantly going. Yahoo, we don't have a push to, but we're still being found in Yahoo from people who are searching for products.
How about Pinterest? Do you do any integrations with Pinterest at all,
We do.
intentionally or not? Or okay.
Yeah, yeah. So we've been experimenting more with Pinterest, and we've actually uploaded our product catalog many times to Pinterest, and so we've got, I don't know, 100,000 pins, I guess they call it. But yeah, we've uploaded very consistently into Pinterest.
And I think that that's a strategy too. As I've been exploring and learning with marketplaces and having these conversations too, is it's also with the marketplaces, it's not about how many direct sales immediately come only as part of that marketplace, but the more sophisticated strategies are actually leveraging the rest of the tech in the ecosystem. And
Yes.
that's something a lot of artisan businesses wouldn't necessarily pause to think about. And so as I've seen, it's not so much just about the marketplace, but you need to ask different questions about, now what's the marketplace doing? Because a lot of these marketplaces are now pushing to these other places. So as opposed to
Yes.
you having to figure out how to put your stuff on Google Shopping, like if you do Shopify and your own site, you have to deal with all those integrations.
Yeah.
Where
Yeah.
part of, as a platform that I've seen that's really interesting, is then saying, oh, okay, well, if you go onto a platform and they push it to Pinterest, they push it to Google Shopping or to other things as well. Again, just another consideration point for people to think about, which pieces do I want to or need to manage, or which pieces can I sort of outsource? Because I've noticed as a techie with a techie background, nobody really talks about it. And then I get into it, I'm like, oh, I don't think people realize that this is actually what quite a few of the marketplaces have started doing, and it's becoming almost table stakes for the marketplaces to push to
Oh
some of
yeah.
these other
Yeah.
sources.
You have to, if you're not. There's a little bit of keeping up with the Joneses. It's part of what you have to do as a marketplace. And to your point, when you build your own website, you've got to tie into the Google Merchant Center, right? If you join a
Mhm.
marketplace that works with Google, you just post the products, and the marketplace has tied your product into the Google Merchant Center. So yeah,
Exactly.
it's different.
hmm So now, so we've talked about what makes a good product listing. What advice would you give artisans who are starting to look around at a marketplace and trying to decide, okay, as they think strategically about their businesses, how do they decide which marketplaces would make sense for them?
Yeah, well, I think you have to look inward before you look outward. Like what is your goal an artisan business? What are you trying to achieve? I mean, the easy answer is I want sales, right? But beyond I want sales is like, well, what are your goals for sales? Do you have a certain amount you're trying to make, or is this a full time job or a part time job for you? And then think about from the time you have to spend on it. If this is a full time job, maybe you're going to say, I want to choose 3 to 4 platforms I should be on. It's a part time
Mhm.
job and you also have a full time job that's outside of making. You might be like, listen, I'm just going to choose one platform. I don't have time to manage 4 platforms, right? So you've got to first kind of understand what is your capacity to do this and what are you trying to achieve. Once you figure that out, then you can look at these marketplaces more holistically on what are they bringing to the table for you. If it's just you want to just try and post products and pray they sell, you're going to want to choose one of the bigger ones, right? That's not a winning strategy. I mean, it's not the days anymore. You can just post the product and wait.
Mhm.
But if you have very minimal time to even dedicate to your business, I hate to say it, but I would recommend one of the larger marketplaces. Now, if you're looking to build your business, where you want to build your brand, you want to build your audience, you want to build your email list. You want to really go at it with a more concerted effort to build who you are. A lot of times, the smaller marketplaces can give you the ability to do that because there's not as many sellers on them. And as you mentioned a moment ago, they have tools like we have Mosaic and others have similar, where you can start building your brand and getting the support from a small marketplace that you usually wouldn't get from a big one. Um, I find that even the smaller marketplaces, um, the communities are tighter. People seem
Mhm.
friendlier. They want to help each other more because they're all in it together. The larger marketplaces seem a lot more corporate, and because of that, the communities are a lot more corporate. They're a little more
Mhm.
they're a little more bloodthirsty. I would call it. And I'm not saying this is a positive or a negative, but the reality is that there's a different vibe to some of these communities depending on where they're at in their own growth. Um, so some of the makers I know just really want to be part of a great marketplace community that they can get to know each other and really enjoy their lives as a maker beyond just how many sales they get. Um,
Mhm.
and then you get into like the basic comparisons. What are the transaction fees? What are the costs? All that sort of stuff. I mean, you're going to do your cost comparisons no matter what. Um, I would just say that marketplaces in general are pretty cheap compared to like your own website. I mean, Etsy is
Mhm.
what, 20 cents a listing, 25 cents a listing, something like that. Our lowest plan is $2.50 a month. I mean, some of these marketplaces, the cost is so low to enter that you almost don't need to worry about cost as much as you have to worry about, what are you going to do with it once you're on
Mhm. Mhm. So now, how do people apply to sell on Go Imagine, and how do they follow you on social media?
it. Well, I like the word used, apply, because we do have an application process. You can't just join and start selling. So if you go to our website, goimagine.com, click on become a member, you can choose the
Mhm.
plan you want. And then there is an application process where you have to fill out a form explaining who you are, what you sell, things like that, because we have an actual physical human who looks at every application that comes through and decides if it meets our handmade qualifications. So most do. The nice thing is that I think if you're not handmade, you probably get scared off pretty quickly to even want to apply. So the
Mhm.
vetting happens before you even submitted the form. But it doesn't mean we don't get bad actors who try to get through. So we do. Every day we've got a couple that are trying to sneak through that should not be on our website, and we have to decline that application. But that's few and far between. On social, definitely check us out on Go Imagine on Facebook. As I mentioned, I'd love to not just talk about our Go Imagine Facebook business page, but our Facebook group, which has 12,000 sellers in it. Check us out on Go Imagine on Instagram. It's Go Imagine underscore life. Go Imagine life. You can find us on Instagram. And if you're up for downloading a new social media platform, we have our own. It's called Maker Circle. Maker Circle is the first ever maker and artist oriented social media platform. It's Facebook for handmade artists, essentially. and it's
Mhm.
free to use. You can download it on the App Store, Maker Circle, and we have a lot of community members there. We've got thousands of community members on there, and you'll see me every Wednesday in Maker Circle. I do an office hours at 1 o'clock. So if you ever want to just chat with me, we have every Wednesday we have hundreds of people who join in and start chatting with me, kind of like we're doing right now, Amber. Just off the cuff discussion.
Mhm. You never know, I might pop in one day and you just
You are well. You are more than welcome to.
So my last question for you before we sign off is, in your opinion, and yes, you have to pick a favorite child, what's the coolest thing you've ever seen sold on the marketplace? You were like, "Oh, that's so cool." Tell us the thing that you think
Uh,
is the coolest thing you've ever seen sold on the marketplace.
we've got a lot of cool products that have been on the marketplace. I'm a big fan of the people that do the welding of like robot structures. Like they use like pipes
Mm.
and nuts and bolts. They create robot structures out of welding. They basically, I don't want to say they're welding junk, but they're taking stuff and they're welding it into these really cool robot structures. Um, that said, we have one seller who's been killing it, selling a ton, and he sells outdoor bidets for camping. And he 3D
Oh,
prints them. He designed them. He 3D prints them, and he has an entire YouTube channel dedicated to how to poop in the woods. And it's a 3D printed bidet. He has a patent on that. Yeah, and he's been selling a ton of them for all the people who go camping and they don't want to wipe with paper or wipe with leaves. He sells them an outdoor bidet that they can carry in their backpack. And yeah, yeah, and and he does very well because he has a niche product you don't find everywhere.
talk about nailing your target audience.
Yeah, and it's called he's Paul. His name's Paul the Backpacker, and it's Holy Hiker Bidets. And if you looked him up on YouTube, I kid you not, he has a YouTube video with tons of views where it starts with "Do you poop in the woods? I also like to poop in the woods." Like that's how he starts his video. But he found his niche, he found his calling, and he sells them like hotcakes.
Oh, oh, that is too fun. I think the coolest item one is, I think, my favorite question to ask all the marketplaces because you get to
You
see
don't
a
know what
little
they're going to say.
personality.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I
exactly.
never have any idea what they're gonna say. That makes it just so incredibly fun. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, John. And everybody, you can go ahead and check out Go Imagine on all the socials. Otherwise, we will see you next month for our next marketplace report.
Thanks for the time, Amber.